Well folks, it's time for the Zwift Games 2025. My racing score is on the move, forcing me to race in the B category. Will this destroy me? Not only will I have to ride with the accomplished B-Cat racers, I will have to compete with them in the mountains. As a reminder, I am a sprinter. I am not a climber. I'm in the 80 kilogram club. I'm in the 80 kilogram club. 80 kilogram club. I'm in the 80 kilogram club, which means I have to pull more weight up the climbs than many of the competitive cyclists in the B category. Unfortunately, I did not start recording my races until stage 5 of the Zwift Games. So I will summarize stages 1 through 4 before sharing the stage 5 festivities. Let me jump right into the action with a flat course for stage 1 that I was very excited about. I was coming off a C-Cat win in the final stage of the Flat is Fast series, and my confidence to compete for a win in this race was high. However, there were 114 Zwifters taking part in this race, so I knew that it was going to be hard to win. As soon as stage 1 started, I could feel I was on a good day. It felt easy to stay with the pack, despite having to maintain over 260 watts of average power. Just before the downhill portion of the course, a small breakaway formed off the front, and I felt so strong that I couldn't resist jumping across to join in on the fun. I also thought that there was a chance the breakaway could go, and I didn't want to miss out. In the end, the race came back together, and I went to the back of the pack to save energy. There was a small climb just before the finishing sprint, and I made sure to stay right at the front of the pack in case some of the light riders decided to make a break for it. As we crested the short climb, I was in a perfect position, about 5 or 6 wheels off the front as we descended towards the final stretch. We were all still a fair distance from the finish, but I was near the front of a very strung out peloton, and I still felt like I had good power. So I started my sprint for the line with a huge surge of power and created separation from the pack. It worked. It worked very well. I jumped off the front with a 2-second lead that the pack was never able to reduce. This was my second Zwift Racing Series win in a row, and I was feeling extremely powerful. So much so that I made the absolutely crazy decision to race in Cat B for stage 2. Now, stage 2 is not really that flat. There were plenty of opportunities to get dropped due to inattentiveness. This was my second Category B race, and feeling so strong on stage 1, it felt possible that I could hang around with the main group until the end. And maybe, just maybe, I would have a little something left for a sprint. As expected, in a 47 racer field, the pace was hot. Riders were consistently getting dumped off the back of the pack. I did my best to stay near the front on the climbs to reduce the risk of getting left behind. Despite the fast pace, I managed to hang on until the final sprint. During the last riser before the finishing stretch, I made sure to use my drafting power up to help me get to a good position for the sprint. My plan was to go early again, just as I had for stage 1. When it came time to pull the trigger, I really didn't want to surge, as I was already very depleted. But I was in a perfect position, and all that was left was one last big effort. So I went, and I went with everything I had. Again, I wanted to create separation, and again, I did. Now, with this being a Category B race, and with me being significantly more drained than during the final sprint in stage 1, I was almost positive that my plan would not work, and that I would get passed by the real sprinters like I was standing still. I waited, and I waited to get past, and nobody ever came around. I won a Category B race. I was in shock. There was no way that this could have happened, right? I'm a middle-aged guy who just started to get serious about riding. Now here I was with wins in not only C category, but also B category. But this is where reality would settle in. It was time for the mountain stages. The first was stage 3, which would have the field climb the volcano KOM around the middle of the route. And then finish with a sprint up the much shorter Zwift KOM. My goal was to get over the Volcano KOM with the main peloton. I estimated that this climb would take me about 8 minutes, and I honestly did not like my chances to make it over the climb with the group, but I treated the Volcano KOM like my finish line. We would have a long descent upon cresting, and if I could stay with the field, I would have a free ride in the safety of the peloton to the finishing climb. Then I would pace my way to the finish, assuming that the climbers would explode up the Zwift KOM, making the sprinter types look silly. 64 riders lined up for this race. The initial parts again were very fast, and I had to maintain over 280 watts average just to stay with the field to the base of the climb. My heart rate was already over 170 beats per minute as we started the climb, and I yo-yoed off the back for the entire thing. But each time I started slipping away, my determination kicked in, and I stepped on the pedals to regain contact with the field. As we got closer and closer to the top, and there were not any breakaway attempts off the front, I started to believe I could make it. So I dug in and intentionally burned all the matches I had. As we closed in on the crest, a final surge was needed to ensure I wasn't dropped, and I rolled over the top with the front group. As I said before, I used all the energy I had on this climb. I averaged over 300 watts for nearly 20 minutes just to stay with the pack. That was a deep effort for me. It was as deep as I could go. I did my best to recover with the pack as we descended, but I never really got my heart rate back under control. When we hit the Zwift KOM, I was immediately dispatched out of the back, and I paced my way to the finish, putting out the third most power out of the 64 riders in this race. Strong effort, but I needed to be stronger to compete for the win. I rolled over the line in 19th place, which I was very pleased with. It was time to reset for stage 4, which tested the riders on both the Fox Hill KOM and the Box Hill KOM, with the race finishing atop the ladder. Again, my goal was to make it over the initial climb with the main field, and then pace my way up the final grade. I was very close to achieving my goal of reaching the initial Fox Hill KOM with the field. I was just 2 seconds back. I joined up with a group a couple seconds behind me, and we were able to regain contact with the peloton on the Fox Hill descent. As we reached the Box Hill KOM, I managed to stay with the field briefly, but soon settled into my own pace, and I finished in 21st place. My racing score was increasing rapidly, and I reached 452 after this race. Finally, it was time for stage 5. I raced this at the upper B category, and I was pretty intimidated. I was now going to race the best of B in the mountains, which I'm not good at. Before we get to the race footage, I am excited to share why I am wearing the green Sprinters jersey. As I was wrapping up my warm-up, the sprint point came up and I decided to stretch my legs and go for it. And it just so happens that I came across the line with the fastest time at that moment. And so I got to wear the Sprinters jersey. Now it's time to get on to the race footage. The race started at a pretty reasonable pace. Nobody went out too terribly hard, and it was easy to stay with the pack. Now my goal for this stage was to stay with the main pack until we got to the grade. I would then climb the grade at my own pace and use my heavier weight as an advantage as I went down the other side, finishing by pacing my way up the final climb. Now early in the race we had a breakaway. 4 riders were eventually able to get away. I wasn't too concerned with that. Remember, my goal was to stay with the pack. Now the first climb was the big first test. Did I have what it took to stay with the main pack? Now by no means was this a long or steep climb. While I was fairly confident that I was going to stay with the group, I was a little bit concerned that I was going to get left behind like a diesel truck trying to take part in a Formula 1 race. As expected, the climbers did hit this climb really hard, but it was still early in the race and I was feeling fresh. You can see that my heart rate does creep pretty high here, but it's nothing that I can't manage for the short duration of this climb. It turns out that while I did have to put out some pretty big watts, I was able to stay with the pack. There are still the 4 riders out front, but I'm with the main pack, so that's job done. At this point, I'm still feeling really fresh, and we have a lot of flat coming up, so let's go. Now this next climb is a much bigger challenge, especially initially. The pace isn't quite as hot as the last little hill, but this is a much longer climb. Ultimately, I felt pretty strong on this climb as well, and I didn't have any problem staying with the pack. You can see on the mini-map that this is definitely stretching out the pack. I will say that as we approach this corner, I was looking forward to this climb being over. However, just like those overly excited infomercial presenters on TV say, but wait, there's more! My heart rate is getting really high here, but I do know that the top of this climb is approaching, and I just need to hang on for a little bit longer. Just one last little push, and we get to enjoy the scenery at the top of this climb. Actually, I'm going to be suffering and probably not paying any attention to the scenery at all. Now, this is the Mayan mountainside KOM, and I am expecting to be in agony as the pace is pushed to the brink by the climbers who are tired of having me in the group. To my surprise, the pace actually doesn't really get that hard. I think everybody just wanted to keep as much energy as possible in reserve for the grade. Honestly, we go up the rest of this climb with little to no incident. There isn't much to look at or talk about, so I'm going to skip ahead to the next climb. Now we're on the Itza KOM. This is the last test before we get to the grade. I'm feeling really good having been able to stay with the pack all the way up until now. I feel very confident that I will be able to get to the base of the grade with this group. When I say base, I mean halfway up. We actually only climbed the top half of the grade during this race. Again, the pace on this climb is not very high. I think everybody's saving their energy for what is the grade. The second hardest effort on this course, and absolutely what's going to break this pack up. My heart rate does climb up into the 180s here, and I know that during this slight and very short decline coming up, I have to do my very best to bring my heart rate back down. Well, folks, here it is, the grade. Thank you for sharing this journey with me so far. Now all we have left is the two biggest climbs in the race. No big deal. I have no intention of trying to stay with the pack up this entire climb. As a matter of fact, I think that the pack will disintegrate altogether. But I do give a little effort here to try to stay with the group as long as I can. Of course, I do make sure that this effort doesn't put me in the red. Well, I guess according to Zwift, I am in the red. But what I mean is, I don't want to burn all my matches here. As you can see, I popped my feather here because I do want to stay with the group as long as I can. The featherweight power-up reduces your weight, so it's easier to climb. But this is where I bid the group farewell. It's been a great ride, my friends, but all good things come to an end sometime. Now it's time to get into a rhythm and grind my way up this climb. Top, and this rider here passed me. I didn't want to go over the top with him, so I put in a little dig, and I kept digging over the top to make sure we had separation and he wasn't able to sit on my wheel on the way down. I know that sounds mean. Sorry, no free rides. This is a race after all. My heart rate had come way down as I descended the mountain. I make a mistake here by putting in too much effort to catch these two, but this dig brought it way back up just before the final climb. There was no reason for me to put in that effort because I was just going to go up the final climb at my own pace anyway. Well, that's a learning point for next time. Here we are on the final climb, and I am in 12th place, not looking too bad. I'm gonna go at my own pace up this climb. I let these two go that I should have never caught on the downhill. When I started this climb, my aim was to stay at around 280 watts average. Now I have Adams catching me and going right by me. He's been putting out some massive watts on the downhill and now the bottom parts of this slope to make the catch, and it looks like he wants to catch the guys in front of me too. I'm not personally too worried about him because, like I said, he's put in a lot of effort over the last 10 minutes, while for the most part, I've been cruising. And about 5 or 6 minutes later, I do make the catch. As I have gone by him without really increasing my tempo too much, I realize he's tired, and I put in a good dig here to drop him off my wheel and discourage him from trying to follow me. So that brings us to the top of the epic KOM. We've been climbing for about 16 minutes now. These two guys go by me, and I must admit I'm feeling pretty toasted right about now. Now, going back and viewing this footage, I really wish I would have done a little bit more to try to stay on this man's wheel. He must have been tired just like me. Had I dug deep at that moment, I would have stayed with him and made the bridge to the other two riders, and the four of us would have been in a sprint to the finish line, which I feel like I had a good chance to win. Instead, I decided to pace my way up the rest of this hill and then put in a sprint once I crest. Oh well, as the saying goes, hindsight is 20/20. I didn't know he would catch the other two riders, and to be honest with you, I was at my limits and not really thinking straight either. As I reach the top of this climb, I do put in the biggest sprint that I can, and I give it everything to try to catch the rider in front of me. Can I catch him? Let's find out. He barely stays away, but I finish with a very respectable time and also in 14th place. Not bad. Well, that wraps up the Zwift Games for me. I thought about going back and doing stage 1 and 2 again at a higher level for a faster time, but my overall finishing place wasn't too bad, and I decided to stick with what I had. It was a big challenge and really intimidating to step up and race the B riders, but ultimately it made me a much better rider, and I'm thankful to have had the opportunity. The Zwift Games were great, and I can't wait for them to come around again next year. Thanks for watching.